This is a production of Cornell University.
So sit back, relax, but it's going to be full packed, and I will help you to unpack. So this 30, 40 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the context of CGIAR. You know, now it's going through the OneCG consolidation, almost replicating exactly the big multinational company, the big six, all right? And the second part, I'm going to walk you through some survey results, some analysis, and the MBA tools, concepts applied to it, and including the gap analysis and also the root cause analysis. And at the end, I will try to give some recommendations. CGIAR, most of you in the room also on the line, I think you're familiar with CGIAR. If you are not, basically it's the Green Revolution and also, you know, Burlock, right? So it's technology innovation and its adoption. It's great success story. And on left-hand side, you can see just the wheat, the yield increase. That's really changed agriculture, I would say at least from the 60s to 80s. And also, as part of the Green Revolution, the other product is the forming of CGIAR. And you can see the funding fall. The funding fall, you know, is a CIMMYT, is ERIE, ITA, and CIAT. And later, with the success, we have the first expansion, and we have the second expansion. So there was 18, and later consolidated into 15. So why OneCG? After 6 years, great glory, and such huge impact, and why now? From this figure, you can tell from the 72 to all the way to 2017, the funding actually going all the way up, all the way to 2014. But since then, dramatically going down. And especially during COVID time, it's another 10%. So CGIAR together have to really work together to rebrand the offering to be competitive. So this has a lot of economic drivers. So I did a Python analysis, basically policy, environmental, technology, etc. But it's one single factor for the simplicity is economic factor. So why now? You can see this is from the CG website. The overall funding steadily declining since 2014. It's almost a 30% reduction. And you can tell why. Because the public breeding, the funding from the high-income countries, as previous slide showed, is shifting. It's all going to private industry and the funding, for example, vertical farming, right? And for low-income countries, the state-owned agriculture is really prospering. They are delivering the local needs. So why we need this international agriculture organization? So for 5 consecutive years, you can see the double-digit deficits. And to overcome these deficits, that's why consolidating into one. How about the digital transformation project? Here, give you a little bit of context. In this past 10 years, started with a breeding management system that's part of the integrated breeding platform. That was funded by Gates, had a great success. And the second round, we had a breed base. That's for the next generation cassava and extended to other root tuber banana crops. And later, we had almost concurrent breeding for rice and also Gobi, genomic open source breeding informatics. And soon after that, we had enterprise breeding system, the EBS. And this is supposed to be crop agnostic and it's supposed to be really easy to scale and low cost to maintain. And this is a grand vision. And as of 21, breeding for rice and Gobi are folded into EBS. So the current state is EBS, breed-based, and BMS. These three large digital transformation projects are concurrent. So this MBA project is a real-time management consulting. I was passionate trying to solve what's actual goals. So why our funder investors investing so much on the digital transformation project? What kind of values they deliver? Are we there yet? And if not, what are the reasons? So I interviewed and also surveyed the digital transformation project, all the previous several projects, directors, adoption leads, and some informal and some formal. And here, based on the directors' answers and discussions. So please take this as the face value. They are not comparable, but this is just the first step, help us to put some quantitative numbers, all right? So you can see there, I would say, divided into three types of products. If you call this project deliver products, also deliver services. So three types of products. The first type is managing breeding data, okay? And the second type is the genotyping data. And the third one is more like market segments. If you are looking at any kind of crop species versus very specialty crop is more like a root tuber banana. So from this, you can see the value proposition, the EBS and the BMS, very similar. They are targeting to very generic, any kind of crop species. No differentiation from each other, these two, okay? For the same goals. And the Gobi is very unique. It was funded to manage genotyping data. It was never supposed to serve directly the breeding data, breeding process. However, Gobi does have the decision support to use genotype data. And the breed-based is mainly for serving the root tuber banana crops, all right? And the BFRs mainly for rice. So from this table, you can see the key information you need to look at is the total investment and also the investment used for development, all right? So these are numbers from the directors and also the current percentage of completion based on the original target. And the next one is the number of users. So the users all depends on different systems. They say how many people logged in, and could be some very active users, or maybe some that started logging in, for example, for EBS. And then the percentage is the adoption rate, okay? The adoption rate depends on the original targeted total, how many users could be in this. And another index we can look at is the productivity index. So productivity index is total what percentage completed and over how long, and also how much spent on it. It's just a way to help us to look at it. Any questions before I go to next slide? Okay, so if not, here the current state based on just the positioning for these products. I would say there are many ways. This is just a simple way to look at it. In terms of handling breeding data or genotyping data, this is the x-axis, and the y-axis is looking at, do you have integrated data analysis support capability as of now, April 2022, okay? And you can see Gobi, yeah, very much focused on genotyping and also how marker system selection, genomic selection is outside the major data management systems. And the BMS, breed-based, EBS, these three are intended to have its own data analytics, decision support. But as of it is, breed-based where currently has some genomic selection pipeline built in. And the BMS can also handle low mid-density markers. And the EBS, until Gobi is already integrated into EBS as it is mainly focusing on the phenotyping. And the before original design has the sample tracking, but not much the genotyping. All right. So another way to look at it is in order to evaluate the success of these digital transformation projects is where they are in terms of adoption, right? That's all we care. If you how the product, how the user using it. And also is who develop it, because who develop versus the adoption is very much dependent on the ownership. That's why if developed outside of the CGIAR, they really very much buy-in. So this is the current map. So you can see EBS before are mainly owned from development, also adoption. They have great competitive advantage on the right top quadrant. And the BMS, Breed-Based Gobi, the development team were outside the CG. All right. And in terms of adoption, there is also strategy. Is a sponsor from higher up versus really the bottom up. There's different adoption advantage as well. So as of now, on the left-hand side, you can see any kind of product on the market. I'll go through R&D development and is going through some early testing until you have early adopter introduction, and eventually you go through the growth and maturity and decline. This is for seeds and then for electronics, for any kind of products. And on the right-hand side is from the MIT summary based on industry, all kinds of digital transformation products. You need to go through this design, and you really need to continue invest until this goes through the deployment, until it's stable, and finally can emerge almost under the word emerge after a few years and going through this feature enhancement, user feedback, can go through improve. And among this, it can be shorter, like 3 years, can be longer, all depends on how agile this process can be, right? So the key message here is the break-even point. So in order to invest in these digital transformation projects, as a funder and donors, we need to be aware there's the regular life cycle, regardless how hard, how good the project management, all right? So as of 2022 April, that's what we see, Breed-Based BMS almost get to the meeting the users, stakeholders expectation stage. So at this stage, once users started adopting, we call that transformation. And Gobi basically already rolled into EBS before even come up to the surface level, all right? All right, lessons learned. This based on the interview. And on the left-hand side, I think very much matching with the Harvard Business Review, what we see. 4 points to summarize from this director's feedback is the most critical, we cannot emphasize more if you really have the people on your team. That's depends, basically that determine everything. If you do not have the right people in leading the technology, leading the adoption, leading the strategy, you do not have the value proposition to say you will have a successful project. The second one is partnership. If you go alone, you go faster. If you go together, you go further. Repeatedly from interview, we see this. Third one is very critical, we learned. You really need to quick turn around. You really maintain very transparent, intimate customer relationship. You can be late, right? When you go to the airline, you found that you are 3 hours late. If the airline company people never talk to you, you're mad, right? But if they come out, like in Japan, they give you tea and they give you snacks, they talk to you, they keep on updating you, when's next flight, you're happy, right? You partner with the owner, exactly, fast turnaround and maintain transparent, intimate customer relationship. Last one, the most important, that's where we are now, is breeding champions. You need to have the on-the-ground breeding champions work with you. you really need to have the senior leadership from the institution sponsor you. And you need to have the investors behind you. Because for all these digital transformation projects, it's almost like a business to business kind of business model. There need to be commitments. There need to be contracts, top down, bottom up. If you miss one, it's not going to get you there. All right. So great lessons learned. So after seeing the survey results and also the lessons learned, now let's go to the next step. So next step is where I did a deep analysis. I tried to think during this MBA consulting project is what's the original founders' goals? What are their strategies? So why these projects were funded, right? Over and over, together, 72 million in the last 10 years. So this we can see actually is really about fast variety turnaround, right? And it's really improved the productivity, the quality, managing breeding, because nonprofit, our CGIAR, want to replicate these large multinational agricultural companies. What we have, what we do not have, right? We have great scientists, and from one stage to another stage to another stage, can we manage this breeding cycle, hand off the product to the next stage gate as productively as our counterpart? That's what the founders think. We are in the position, we have the technology, and we can. So that's the original goals. That's why the investment, we are able to say we are competitive. However, here, that's my analysis is by each bucket, which each stage, we are doing just fine. However, the red arrow is, this is integrated business value chain. There's a gap. For our systems, for our people, for our process, we have too many transaction costs. We are not able to fast turn around and to capitalize what's already being delivered from the previous value chain. And we are not able to go through this fast recycling, quickly make decisions to feed back, to improve this continuously. So this business value chain gap between the current state and the future state, where we want to be. Next one, in terms of the capabilities, the boxes highlighted in yellow. Looking at all these digital transformation systems currently, we can ask ourselves, do we have the functionality? Do we have the capabilities? Is that easy enough to manage the business rule and processes, pipelines, to enable the optimized the product handoff? So this is my self-assessment as a breeding, I would say, domain expert from industry and also 20 years. And that's what I see. We have a lot of tools, definitely. However, the area highlighted in yellow, they are not integrated. So the process, there's disconnect. And that's the thing preventing us from being able to meet funders' goals. You understand the goals and also the gap. This is one way of to look at root causes. So root causes, there are different tools. This is one tool called congruence model. Congruence model basically is you have very solid strategy. We do have solid strategy, right? In the CGIAR all these years for every digital transformation project. However, you put all the contributing factors in the same buckets. So we put them in the work, so what the goals, what we need to do. And what's the people, right? That's what we already see, the key competency in the project. And what kind of structures enabling the people to accomplish the goals, the work, right? And also the culture. So with the input, you evaluate, do we have the desirable output outcome? If they do not align or matching with your expectation, Then you dive down into each of the buckets and find where's your root cause. Okay, given the time, I'm going to give you a little bit of the hint, okay? We have great people, and we have great business analysts, and so many example data, process business rules. However, to meet the funders' goals without outputs, we are not there yet. I would say the major root cause, if these codes can help us to think, I will read to you. So Jack Welch, the former CEO, right? The GE is a great use case for us to learn about leadership. He says, an organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. This match with our lessons learned from the directors. You need to be agile, you need to be quick adapt and learn. It's okay, you do not have the technology, but you have the people, you have the culture to learn. So great leader, and he's also thought leadership, Simon Sinek. He says, true human leadership protects an organization from the internal rivalries that can shatter a culture. When we have to protect ourselves from each other, the whole organization suffers. But when trust and cooperation thrive internally, we pull together and the organization grows as strong as a result. I will leave these two quotes for us to meditate. All right, transition to the last part. We talk about the CG, the driving factor as economics. We talk about the survey, the results analysis, and we did the current state and future state. There's a gap, and then in the root cause. This is my recommendation for immediate problems. The immediate problem is you have BMS, rebase, EBS, 3 concurrent systems. If the funders want to retire some, or keep all, or deciding what we need to do, or from different institutes, we already started adopting, but not completely there. How do we want to make these decisions? This can be very generic, just simple checklist. Ask these questions. Is the system routinely used to manage the critical operations? If yes, yeah, you need to keep it. Is the system hosting large amount of data processing? If yes, you need to keep it. Can the new system replace the existing capabilities? Back then, I said that if it's no, of course, right? If it's yes, then you sunset. But I would say there's also transaction cost. Think about it. You change your cell phone plan, your provider for your TV program, right? It's not so easy. Even you have a new system with the same existing capabilities. So here is, yeah, but this is a simple way if you want to put a binary kind of answer. Will many clients impacted upstream, downstream, if this existing platform no longer maintained? I know you will have the user, the institute is going to fight with you, nails and tooth, if they are impacted. So maintain, yes, no. And would the new system ready soon meet a similar needs, right? There's a mass question you need to ask. Is the new system low cost to maintain? Is that going to cause critical process to break if no longer maintained? So these are some simple questions we can ask ourselves for managers, for funders. So the decision, yeah, can be huge cost. So let's take educated risk, take informative risk instead of more based on emotion, based on just short-term benefits. Next one. Think about, you are trying to think about which one to keep to maintain, and also where the current adoption map. Can we safely project 3 years from now 22, 23, 24. For these three systems, BMS, breed-based, EBS, where will they be? So EBS may need another 2 to 3 years, finish the development until it can be stabilized, have more user feedback. Breed-based BMS currently already have a lot of users, as the matrix you showed, right? 800 people already logged in. Of course, you also saw the gap in terms of managing the current processes, the genomic selection, marker system selection, multi-trial analysis, all that. When users using it, they will be able to give it a feedback. So in the next 3 years, it's super, super critical for all these three systems work really intimately with the customers. So you drive the adoption. Once you drive the adoption, your product will be improved, okay? If you hold back, not being transparent, it will keep you even further behind. Recommendations for the big picture problems. So this will get to the, I would say, how do we manage the performance? Do we want to wait until, say, millions of dollars spent, several years spent, then we start evaluating and look back? Or we can very transparent manage this. So one tool from the MBA work is called a balanced scorecard, okay? There are 4 buckets. It's very important when we talk about the root causes in the congruence model. How do you manage the people side, the work side, the structure side, and also the culture side? I know it's very small for you to read it. The people side is all about how do we satisfy our funders, our customers, our key stakeholders, right? Managing this, how do we look to resource providers, and including our employees, the developers, right? The business analysts. So all these people, how do we really keep them happy? And what can we measure on a regular basis? Of course, this cost benefits ratio, as we saw, 10:1, and 5:1 earlier we saw. And the product leadership, the customer, how do customers see us? How do we see ourselves can be very different story from how our customers see us. So these, in the column, in the measures, a few KPIs you can use. And in terms of learning growth, as the code says, an organization, how do we manage our growth mind and keep learning? We may not have the answer, but if we have this culture to incentivize people to learn, to grow, we will have success. The last piece is the internal process. How do we make decisions? How do we manage risk? All right, this is just different way to say, we have great opportunities. Can we de-risk? Looking at the 4 buckets, are these questions. The first one you start with a financial stewardship. Okay, then you go down to the internal process, and then you will manage your learning, get things done, and then you will be able to really have great customer relationship. So if you do not start with this very fast learning agile process, that will be difficult. All right, quick summary. So after walking through the broad context, we see the director's survey. We see there's great opportunity. The last 10 years, digital transformation did bring us to a tipping point. The tipping point is 20% versus 80%. We are not as 5 years, 10 years ago. You have to persuade someone to adopt. They are ready to adopt our breeding programs. It's up to us. So we have these breeding champions. Okay, so our gap, our root causes, let's ask us, are we agile enough to learn? Are we transparent enough to engage our customers to do it together, partner with us? Are we engaging our other in this digital ecosystem, the partners, for example, the upcoming Brabi hackathon, together solve the problem, communicate in the same language? That's the first step to start solving the problem. So the product, the services itself is solvable. And the key drive home message here is, let us create a culture and hold digital leadership. With that, I'm going to open up for the questions. But before you ask the questions, I would like to acknowledge the sponsors. This project sponsored by Joumey and supported by Kelly and our funder, Gary. And then the contributors from the digital transformation project directors and coaches and consultants from my MBA program, adopting, overlaying these MBA framework tools into this use case. And then, while you are thinking about the questions on the line and also in the room, I'm going to give you the third person. Okay, ready?
Northeast Iowa. I felt that families on the lands needed help from scientists, and I dedicated my life to science.
I'll show you.
I'm going to play that card and play it hard. We must continue to improve our technology.
So in other words, people who bother to come to the room are being gypped. I'm never coming back.
Watch on my iPad.
All right. Yeah, we have 40-some people on the line. They can see the last person brought me to this seminar complete volunteer. Scientists just like I think many of us working in agriculture field, we have the same culture. If 60 years ago, Norman Borlaug and his colleagues has basically so little technology, they can triple, quadruple the yield of wheat. They are able to get a variety to the farmer's field. Why we can?
He lost his ability to change, he became obsolete. Is this the destiny of the human species? If I am not one to sit idly by.
All right. So please, I welcome any question if we still have time.
Okay, from Gary. Yes, is Gobi really incorporated into EBS? It would be good to hear the status of that integration.
Yes, thank you, Gary. A lot of back-end work has been done, Gary. In terms of the front end, I think is leadership discussion, I think decision. And Gobi not only have the data management piece, also have the market system selection, QC, and the genomic selection as independent tools. So while EBS is building this integrated analytics decision support, I think in the next several years, our users will be good. They see what's the current state of these existing capabilities developed by the past 6-7 years Gobi team and also the CG partners. Okay, Kelly.
So you may have to repeat my question, I guess, Mike, but you mentioned this is kind of a start of looking at this landscape and making future planning. I do think there's a need to learn from the lessons of these projects, and I'm not sure that always gets incorporated back in terms of strategy. So what are the next steps? You mentioned this preliminary data. Is this going to carry forward into a more in-depth analysis on how to invest in this space moving forward?
Yeah. So for people on the line, Kelly's comments or question is, what I just presented is great first step, and what are the follow-up, basically? How do we incorporate the lessons learned? Here are my thoughts. I took on this because I genuinely just interested in, is this a solvable problem? Since in the room, also people on the line, we really have the key decision makers. If you see this provide value for us to get into the second phase, let's do that. I'll be very happy to apply what I learned, and we can even work with the Johnson School, with the Smith School, get consultants a lot of them want to do this just as a free consulting, including myself. We truly think there's high impact. If we can work through this in the second stage, based on the lessons learned, I think that will be huge. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Yes, Jean-Luc.
It seems like one of the problems in Go, I mean, like, so to me, the main problem that you were seeking to present was we have these three systems, EBS, BMS, Breedbase, and how do we decide to move forward with one of these three? I mean, that's sort of the lens that I was looking at your, and it seems like an issue is that it's very hard to come by unbiased opinions about this, because whoever uses a system likes that system, and so they're going to tell the Johnson School this is the good system, right? And I, you know, I mean, so I don't know. I mean, and part of like Kelly when Kelly says, what are the lessons learned? It's like, this is a very difficult thing to do, like developing software. I think everybody in this room realizes developing software that helps breeders is actually hugely challenging, right? And so there, but and yet humans are always hugely optimistic. So there's always somebody who comes along. I think the Johnny come lately in this story is EBS, who thinks, oh, I can do better than people who came before, so I'm going to start something new. And that's just going to happen over and over. I mean, it's like learning the lessons of human nature. Because yeah, I don't know. So I don't have a good question in this, but it would be a great project. But it seems like it would be you would have to find people who have no emotions, practically, who can assess these systems objectively, and I just don't know where to find those people.
Yeah. So Jean-Luc, for people on the line, Jean-Luc's comment is. This kind of a digital transformation project, for example, Gobi, right? We can all have biases and depends on the users. You already got used to, and you will fight for tooth and nails, basically, because it's huge transaction costs to move from one system to another, and you do not know how well. So Jean-Luc's comment is, how can we find someone? You will remove that bias, emotional factors, and this is really challenging problem. Right? Otherwise, there is always another new project idea, new group think they can do better, and you have this going in cycle. Yeah. All right. So, Jean-Luc, I don't think I have a good answer, but I would just say, thinking about in a big multinational company, right? Huh. In big multinational company, it's very much top and down. They will set a budget. This is called a strategic initiative, right? A few, and they can do crowdsourcing from internal, external, like R&D, validate, and after a few years, if it's not profitable, they basically just go sunset or maybe just kill it. So for us, I think it's very important, the evaluation, managing this, how well we are doing, what we are doing well, not doing, what's the learning in a process, very transparent, not by emotions. Because all the people in these projects, we are very much invested in. And it's not really the tools, the system, good or not good. It's developers' time. They will find. I didn't present that, the profile analysis by the IT project directors, by funders, by the directors, by the developers, everyone, there's something drive them, intrinsic motivation, some reward, right? So the key part is people have to talk to each other, and then what make this structure can work is you do not want to go through this commercial term called cannibalization. And what we did in these 10 years, exactly cannibalization. Basically, you launch your own product and you will kill your own product. You launch it again, you kill it. And the customers, when they see this new product, they already adopt it, right? And the new product come in, they compete with each other. And this is not going to help any product to be dominant product. And then for these, the market segment analysis, we see root tuber banana crops, they will have very different needs from inbred crops, hybrid crops, right? Okay.
But they really?
Yeah, right.
That's my question, like we're trying to smush salmon into breed base, and there's a lot that doesn't fit directly, but the foundation is okay, and it's flexible enough that it doesn't make those types of assumptions about inbred or, and we're working with also clonal crops, which have a very different lifestyle. So I guess
Totally.
my question is like, are those divisions really just artificial ways to keep them alive, or are they actually important distinctions?
Yeah. I mean, if I can chip in my 2 cents on this question, and this is just like, the famous story of the 7 blind people and the elephant, right? This problem is definitely an elephant, and we're definitely all blind, and so am I. But like you put breed base into this root tuber banana little box when it can actually be used, agnostic to breeding system. I mean, we use it for sugar kelp, which is, has haploid individuals and diploid individuals. So in some ways, though, I mean, part of the emotional bias that happens here is the sunken cost fallacy, right?
Yeah.
Each of these breeding management systems has a ton of sunken costs in them, and we just hate to kill it because we've already put so much into it. But in this sense, breed base is really threatening because lots of people are using it, and it hasn't actually cost a ton of money. It's pretty nimble. I mean, I'm here. I mean, if Lucas is listening, he's probably smiling from ear to ear, right? Because I'm presenting a point of view, a biased point of view that's pretty much in favor of breed base. But if you just decide breed base could be used by anybody as opposed to relegating it to this RTB box, then all of a sudden it's pretty threatening to BMS and EBS, right? And I'm not sure it deserves to be in that box because actually it's not in that box. In fact, I mean, I'm not saying it's great. Like I know lots of developers really don't like the underlying scheme. I won't name any names, although it's pretty obvious who they might be. But I mean, they've done something right, because otherwise you wouldn't. I mean, like you were very truthful in sort of showing that there was, to a certain extent, a ground up adoption of breed base and not a top down. Nobody, I mean, like, well, some of the people who are using it are more or less being forced to use it, but there are plenty of others who have adopted it without being forced to use it, which says something, So, I loved your answer where you said, company, they would just see if a product is making money, and if it wasn't, after a couple of years and trying to recover the situation, they'd kill it, right? And the problem is really unclear how you figure out whether any of these breeding management systems is quote unquote making money when you have all of these different ways that people are forced to or not adopted and so on.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Luc. I hope people on the line heard Jean-Luc's point. Jean-Luc is trying to help breed base. Okay? Yeah, even if you didn't hear it. Yeah. So just quickly answer your question, also Mara's comments about crop agnostic, maybe the newer project doing better job. I would say for breeding management systems, we are not only managing the data, we are not only managing the decision, we're also managing the business rules and the processes. It's so important. If you see this cycle, this product development cycle for any varieties, right? You go through this cycle from pre-breeding, this mainly characterization stage. Basically, whatever you have a bag of seeds, you do not care about fixation, right? That's very similar like a root tuber banana colonial crops. But for inbred hybrid crops, the process to manage the product versus you go through this entire development cycle, 6 to 8 years. At the end, you do not want to say, I found it, but I cannot give to the farmers, make this as a product, because you will have a mixed bag of, you call that accessions. So you manage the process for inbred, for hybrid. It's a completely different story. You are not only just say, I have the data stored and I'm able to select. Whatever you select, can you scale, right? Can you plant 2 acres? They give you exact same thing. And to manage inbred, how you do the variety development, variety evaluation, and the launch, increase the seeds in terms of seed system, go through that. So much simpler than hybrid crops. Hybrid crops, you have to manage different parents, right? And go through this testing and selecting the inbred. With colonial crop, every year, how many plants you need to plant to evaluate after how many generations, completely different process, completely different decision making. Cannot simplify this more than you have to really understand the business in order to develop the product, in order to product the service. So I would say for us, you need to have the community of practice truly tell you, be part of a development process. You develop features. It's not going to transfer that into capability. It's not going to get you to go from the pre-breeding all the way into what a commercial company is able to say in 4-5 years, you shorten the cycle to deliver varieties. That's a huge mistake if you think you can manage colonial crop the same way as the breeding process, decision-making process, the seed production process as inbred hybrid. Sorry, Jean-Luc.
Could I make a couple of quick comments? It's Gary.
Oh, yes, please, Gary.
Yeah, I just 2 or 3 things. One correction early on, Star, you described me as the funder. I'm not. I work for the funder. I'm an employee. Second is, it's quite humbling to see all your, a whole bunch of your mistakes on one slide. And the third is, I don't think we should frame this problem anymore as which system should we choose. The problem has always been, how do we make public breeding programs more effective and efficient? And the answer turns out not to have been, we build software for them. There's, any of these systems will work well. There's off-the-shelf commercial systems. Prism would have worked fine. We should have bought that. For this level of program, the question really is, going forward, how do we help these programs modernize their processes, deliver higher rates of genetic gain, and how do we avoid over investing in the development of these software tools? I think it's really hard to say what any one of them costs. They're all sort of subsidized in different ways. Some are subsidized by the participation of people whose A-base funding comes from another source. Some are subsidized
Yes, very true, Gary.
directly by grants, and there's no doubt some of them have been more efficient than others. But I don't think the question in front of us, the big question is, which system do we use? I think at this point, it would be great if we just figured out how to efficiently serve the users going forward and minimize investment in something that is not really the core issue to delivering gains in farmers' fields.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I think that discussion, if several years ago, we can talk about this and that. Currently, it's really adoption. Whatever we have.
I mean, if I can contradict the funder here.
Can you hear, Gary?
Can you hear me, Gary?
Of course,
Can
I
you hear
can
me?
hear. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so the question now is adoption, because we have a couple systems that more or less work, right? But until we had a couple systems that more or less worked, the question wasn't adoption, because there wasn't anything to adopt.
Well, there was Prism, there was stuff to buy.
Okay. So maybe we goofed there. We should have just taken what existed as opposed to funding a new thing. And then
Maybe.
these things still need development. I mean, there are still new methods coming online. There's all that need to be mirrored in the software that supports them. So these things at this point, I mean, I think they need to be swimming so that they can, you know, have some user feedback. I mean, you have to have users who are actively using the thing to have user feedback, so that they can then, you know, move on to the next sprint or whatever it is.
No argument. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't continue to improve the tools that are available. At the moment, though, these tools are already pretty good. We need a better process for a more efficient process for ensuring we don't overinvest. And we need to focus on getting them used properly by the breeding programs that we're trying to support.
I really like this discussion. And how about we take this offline and we'll set up something to follow up with key stakeholders. And I think there will be a lot more great ideas to manage maybe the second stage of this analysis, build on the lessons learned. Yeah. And with that, thank you everyone for the 40-some people on the line and also people in the room as we continue on the discussion. Thank you so much. Bye now.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.